So here we have the Elna Supermatic from the 1950s, and if you own one of these, or if you come across one of these, you may find that they can be quite noisy and when they're running. So they can have quite a rumble to them. And that's because in behind this hand wheel here is the motor is sitting vertically up here with a pulley on top, and if they're left in storage for a little bit of time, the pulley can get a flat on it, and that's what's causing this rumbling sound. So the pulley should be completely round, but if it develops that flat, well, then you get this rumbling sound. So I'm going to replace the pulley. You can pick these replacement pulleys up fairly cheaply, and all you really need is something to punch out the cotter pin. I'm just using a 1/16 inch Allen key here, and another punch to just punch that pin back in again, and a bit of gentle persuasion here with a little hammer. So first of all, you can extract this, just undo the screw here. Now that's just a stopper screw to stop the this clutch screw here from going too tight or too loose. Now if you undo that, it allows the stopper to go past the little stopper here, and in behind here you'll find this little washer, and you'll also see that there are a couple of little locating pins here that when you push that onto the shaft, they will locate into little slots on the shaft there. So I'll show you how to put that back together when you take it off. So once this has been unscrewed, you don't have to completely unscrew this either. You can just loosen it to a point where it'll. So what's happening here is is this screw. If I screw that back in, that screw is coming up against these little nipples here. Okay, it stops you from unscrewing too far, so it's limiting the amount that can turn. And if you unscrew that to a point, it will allow this to go past here, like so. You can actually take it right out if you want to. There's the screw right out there. Okay, and then this will just easily pop off. And here is the top of the motor, and that is a pulley. So this spins and drives against this surface here, and you'll also notice here the bobbin winder engages also with this surface here. So what happens is this pulley here gets a flat spot Now if I bring the light in here, I might be able to show you this in more detail. I think you can see it there. There's a flat spot right here. And that's what's causing the rumbling sound. And that's fairly easy to fix, I think, with this replacement pulley here. Okay, and this is sprung loaded, the motor here. There's a spring over here which pulls the motor back, or the pulley back, towards the hand wheel here, and that's nice and free. So what you can do is you can get a Allen key, or pretty much what you want is a shaft that's roughly the size of the cotter pin here. And the cotter pin, if you have a close look, it's got a smaller end and a larger end. So what I do is work from the smaller end here, and you can push this cotter pin out, and I do that by just giving this Allen key attachment a bit of a whack with the hammer here. Just, well, when I say a whack, a gentle hit. So the spring, you know, when you hit, it'll want to sort of go in like this, and you know, you'd think that you'd never be able to, and you probably wouldn't want to push it right in and then hit right against here, because you might damage some bearings or something down in here. So just a short, sharp hit there with the hammer will start to move this cotter pin here. So what we want to do is remove the cotter pin, and then the pulley should pull straight up off that shaft there. So go ahead and do that. Just a good sharp hit. It's gone in slightly again, and you'll find that the pulley will want to turn as you do this, but try and hit it centrally, and you'll see the cotter pin is actually coming out the other side there. And I think if we grab that, maybe just pull that. No, not quite going to come there. Don't want to go hitting it too hard and too far in there, because the cotter pin could fly out and go into the workings there. You might have to then take the base off, or turn the machine up to try and get that pin out if you lose it. Right, you may notice this is a different machine, because I wanted to demonstrate a little idea I had about stopping this pin from going flying into the machine, because that's exactly what happened to me on the last one. So I had a bit of a brainwave. I thought maybe just use a bit of tape, insulation tape here maybe, and just once the pin is part way out, is actually just wrap a piece of tape around the pin, and hopefully, I'm not sure if that's going to hold. Let's see. Hopefully can get away with not losing the pin. There's the pin out there, captured in the tape, so that seems to work quite well. Saves it from flying back into the machine. And you can see here that this is quite free on the shaft here, which makes things very easy because that can just be pulled out, pulled up here. Should be able to get that off. It's a little bit tight there. There we go. Put that off. This one's actually not too bad. There is a very small flat on here, and I don't think I fully explained why that flat forms. Is that when the machine's left, so that pulley goes on there, and this pulley sits against here, and the spring pressure of that motor there, that spring pressure there, is constantly pulling while the machine's sitting, constantly pulling on this, pulling these two together here, and that being rubber forms a flat on there. So when it's sitting for, you know, a long period of time, we'll just sit and make a flat on there. So that's what causes the issue, and there is something you can do to stop that from happening, which I'll show you when I put this back together. But the other thing I noticed also with these is sometimes if the machine's been slightly damp, you know, this shaft here can get quite rusty, and what happens is there's one I've done previously. I've actually that's part of the pulley there. What I've done there is I've actually cut that pulley off because they can rust onto there, and you know that once you get the pin out, you can't budge these, and you know the temptation might be to you know, get a screwdriver in here and sort of try and lever that up, but that's quite dangerous in that you could cause a lot of strain on the shaft here and the motor around here. You scratch all this up, you know. You could put a rag there and lever it, but I just wouldn't lever those off. If they don't come, if that doesn't pull off easily, if it's not free, you could try a little bit of force there, just a very, very small amount of upward force there with a screwdriver. I wouldn't go too hard with that at all. And if that doesn't work, I literally just cut them off with a pair of side cutters. So I just get in here with a pair of, you know, good heavy side cutters and just chip away, you know, cut away that and that shaft there, just sort of clip away along, you know, along here, and then just that just breaks away. And yeah, so that's what I would do if it was seized on there. And then if it is seized on there, you'll probably find that this shaft is a little bit rusty. May pay just to give that a little bit of a clean up first of all. I mean, you could put a piece of cloth in here to stop any you know, bits of rust and flaky bits, dust and whatnot from falling down into the machine. Get a rag into here, stop anything falling down, to capture that any dust and whatnot, and just clean that up with a probably just a very fine file, or yeah, you wouldn't want to go filing it too hard, but just, you don't want to make it any flat surfaces on there. Maybe just give it a polish, and yeah, so that's ready to put the new gear on. Oh, sorry, the new pulley. So that's the new pulley there. So really just over on top of there. sits in there pretty easily. Just line up the holes and grab the cotter pin. And then just making sure that hole's lined up. Try not to drop the pin down in the machine. Like that. I've got the bottom off this one, so it was easy to retrieve, but yeah, you wouldn't want to drop that pin in there without that bottom piece off. Makes it a bit hard to get to. It's only 3 screws to get the bottom off, but it's just a bit of a pain. And then so let's line these holes up here. Looks pretty good. So go in with the very slightly smaller end, just sort of very slightly tapered at the end there. That's the one to start with. So just get that there. Maybe just give it a wee push to see if you can get it started, or just start with a little tap with a hammer here. So you don't need to, you know, give it a good hit or anything, just a very small tap. Just gradually work that in, and that's where the bigger punch comes into play. I mean, you don't need anything too big, but I mean, it doesn't need to go through any holes, so you know, it doesn't really matter what size that punch is. Just get that very slight tap there, and you should be seeing that coming through the other side of the hole. Just very gently. Just make sure that's lining up there, because if that's slightly out, I mean, it should line up, but if it is slightly out, you could punch that through and break a piece off there, but I think that's fairly well self-aligning. That's it. So that's the pulley replaced. Then it's just a matter of putting the hand wheel back on. You might notice that this has kind of been scratched up. I'm not sure if you can see in the light there, but someone's actually scratched up this to give the pulley sort of a little bit more traction on there. So that just looks like they've just sort of scored along here with a screwdriver or something in a bit of a crisscross fashion there. I'm not sure if that's necessary, but I certainly would just make sure that that these surfaces are free from oil and any contaminants, so just really give that a good clean. You know, likewise, if you've got any oil on the pulley while installing it, or grease, you know, it can be a bit dirty. Just give that a good clean. Right, and then just install the wheel there. While I've got this off, it's probably pay to just get a little oil, just a bit of sewing machine oil on that bush there. You only need a drop. That's because you can disengage with this clutch here. You can disengage this clutch to just allow the bobbin winding only without turning the machine over. So if you wanted to wind a bobbin without unthreading the needle, you could do that. And so push that right in. There's a little bit of resistance there. That's the motor pulley spring pushing back there. Okay, now this is a bit of a hit and miss affair. there's two ways that this can go with these two little locators here. Well, actually there's more than that. There's yeah, 4 ways, because there's 2 lots of slots in the shaft there. But pretty much the way this works is that with the screw stopper in here, if we just pretend that this is the actual screw stopper, when with the wheel tight you want it coming close to but not hitting this one of these lugs here, and when it's loose coming back to, you know, enough to disengage the hand wheel. So we want to, when this tightens up, we want it to be here and loosen here, or, you know, in this segment or that segment. It's hard to know where that's actually going to tighten. So what we'll do is just note roughly where that is. Down, let's take that to 6 o'clock, straight up and down there. You can take this off carefully without upsetting that washer, and I can see there that the stopper is going to hit this before it's got the chance to tighten, so I would, that's probably too far, because the stopper will be here. When you try and loosen, it'll hit this lug too soon, but too far. So let's do 180, and I think that's probably pretty close. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's probably about right there. So when this is tight, the stopper will be here, and then you loosen this to disengage the clutch, and the stopper will come up to this lug. So that's probably about right there. So that's just a bit of hit and miss there, and you can test it. So that's actually tight there, so that's driving the needle up and down. Okay. When it's loose, it won't drive the needle, it will just drive the bobbin winder only. Okay, so tighten that, and then put the screw in. Screw tight, and then loosen. Test that this is not turning when it's loose, which is fine, and then it's turning now when it's tight. So that's working the way it should. Now, if I was going to store one of these machines for a long time, what I would do is take this screw partially out. You don't have to go all the way out, as I explained before, but just far enough for it to get past the those little lugs. So I would probably loosen that, you know, fairly well out. You don't want to go back too far, I guess. Well, then again, you might have to, well, just to keep everything there so you don't lose any parts, and then just pull that. Actually, probably just take the, yeah. So I would store the machine, you know, so that it's not holding in there, it's not pushing against that pulley. In fact, you know, you could store the machine like that, just as long as you don't lose the parts, obviously. Keep those in a safe place. But I would say that's probably the best way to store the machine, because you know that this is not going to be pushing up against here no matter what. I mean, yeah, you could probably get away with, you know, just very loosely on there, but then this is going to be all out of alignment anyway. You're going to have to put all this back on anyway, so yeah, I would just store it like that. Bit of a pain, but it will save that flat spot from forming, and you know, the only pain is getting this right. So just roughly try not to drop things. Probably too far, not far enough. That's probably about right. And then just check it. Yeah, that's enough. Yeah, so yeah, that's it pretty much. Yeah, I'll probably do a video on these on this model. It's quite a good model actually. This particular one doesn't have the buttonhole feature in here, where you'll notice some of them will have mechanism up in here, which is to works with the buttonhole attachment cam. But yeah, some of them don't have that. This one doesn't. The other problem with these machines too is the little knob, black knob here, disappears, falls off. That's your stitch width selector. That can fall off. Yeah, I've seen people drill holes through there and put little paper clips or whatever to make that easier to pull across when the knob's fallen off. So this is how my one sounds. This is one I've got in my collection here. Pretty sure I've done the pulley in this one. So I can't quite remember if I have or whether it was just in good condition. But anyway, this is how they should sound. So thanks for watching that video there on the Elna Supermatic pulley replacement.